This episode and the entire year of episodes is proudly brought to you by California Cryobank. Go to cryobank.com and use code LOVEISLOVE and get a free level 2 subscription to their donor catalog. Start making those babies and then come tell me about them. Thank you, California Cryobank.
Love is love on the Queer Family Podcast. Love is love.
So anyway, yes, I got tested, and then it just made me think so much about already being kind of gender non-conforming. It's like, but always having my breasts to get me into the washrooms or, so it was like, okay, well, what's going to happen if I don't have them,
Right.
And, when I look back now, sort of where I am in my life now, I would have asked very different questions and I would have advocated for different things. So when I went to see the breast surgeon, it was like, well, you should go see a plastic surgeon to talk about reconstruction. I was like, huh? Me? Are you me? And so, but there weren't other options. There wasn't gender affirming healthcare options.
Welcome, y'all, to the Queer Family Podcast, the show all about family, but with gay. If you're watching the video, I just did a terrible wink at my "but with gay" comment. But anywho, this is the show that highlights, uplifts, celebrates, and normalizes LGBTQIA plus families in all of our beautiful identities. And I'm Jaimie, I'm your host, and I am really, really excited to be bringing this week's episode to you. It is such a wonderful conversation. I can't wait for you to hear it. It's a conversation I had with Sarah and Tamara. Sarah and Tamara are gay moms. They also happen to be gay grandmas. And we have a conversation about how they started their family with a known donor situation. And we go into a little of the non-bio connection and our thoughts surrounding that. But what I really am excited for all y'all to hear is the second part of the conversation. So please make sure you listen through, where we talk about the documentary that Sarah is a subject of. The documentary is called Not Quite That, which explores Sarah's journey of discovering that she's a BRCA gene carrier and the emotional and physical implications for her and her wife, Tamara, and their close friends as they grappled with how they'd all feel. They all talk about it, about losing possibly what's often seen as a very feminine part of our bodies, the breasts. And what struck me most in this conversation, and this documentary does a wonderful job of kind of displaying this, is how our assumptions about how people in our lives might react to something like this can be so off base, even how we react to something like this. It's totally relevant in the queer community, of course, but also it can resonate deeply in cisgender heteronormative spaces. I mean, think about it. Have you ever really asked yourself how you'd feel about losing your breasts, right? Would you want reconstructive surgery? And if you have asked yourself that, have you asked your partner? Have you ever asked them how they'd feel? Do you know how they'd feel? Because honestly, the answers might surprise you. They certainly surprised me. And this conversation feels particularly timely for me as my wife and I are navigating this in real life after her recent breast cancer diagnosis. And it's a really personal and really meaningful discussion about gender, self-expression, and what gender-affirming care means to each of us. If we all really pause to ask ourselves questions like these, we might discover so much more about our authentic selves, regardless of how we present or show up in the world, right? It's really got me thinking. And I'm obviously going through a lot here with my wife in our house, and we're doing great. So don't worry about us. But, we're grappling with a lot. But I can't wait for you to hear this episode. It's a really wonderful one. So please stick through for that part of the conversation. Before I roll that tape, I do want to talk to you about one thing that a former guest, Amanda Spakowski, reached out to me about, and I want to share it with all of y'all. I think it's important. I'm going to read from a script, but you bear with me here. So she emailed me about Rainbow Railroad, which is a global not-for-profit organization that helps at-risk LGBTQIA plus people get to safety worldwide. And since their founding in 2006, they've helped over 19,000 individuals, which is amazing. find safety through support, including emergency relocation, crisis response, and cash assistance. And in 2024, this is what Amanda reached out to me about. She's on the team that's helping these two women who have pseudonyms, Pari and Pani. They arrived in Canada, where a volunteer settlement team through Rainbow Railroad helped them create their new home. Pari is a lesbian woman who faced persecution and possible death in her home country because of her orientation. In her home life, she and Pani were subject to domestic and sexual violence. They attempted fleeing multiple times, but were tracked down by her husband or husband's friends and either harmed or brought back home. It's awful. In the process of planning escape, Pari met and fell in love with a woman who unfortunately died of a health issue before being able to flee with Pari. 10 years and multiple attempts later, Pari and Pani made it to Canada. So Amanda reached out to me because she is part of Pari and Pani's settlement team, and she's raising funds to help them. And she asked me if I could ask my audience. I said yes, if they'd be willing to assist in a one-time or regular donation by sharing the link to their fundraising campaign, which I'm putting in the show notes here. And if you have a little bit extra that you can give to help this family in need, go to the show notes, click the link, and give what you can. I told Amanda I would share it, and I am making it my mission to help out LGBTQIA folks all over. We're living through some crazy political times, and let's do everything we can to help out our community. That's it. That's my soapbox. I hope you enjoy this episode. Do what you can. Support the documentary, support the organization in the show notes, and let's go. Let's raise up this community. I love y'all. Thanks for tuning in. Jerson, Helen, Beulah, please, my loves, please roll that tape. Let's go. Stick to for the second part of this conversation. It's so bomb. It's so good. Okay, roll the tape. Roll the tape. Let's go.
Queer Family Podcast. Love is love.
Hi, Sarah and Tamara.
Hi.
Hi.
It is so wonderful to have you here. I have watched your documentary and thoroughly enjoyed it, and I cannot wait for our conversation.
Let's
Nice.
Let's do this. So the folks at home, the Queer Fam Squad, I like to call them, get to know who you are and why you're here in a nutshell. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds. I'm going to count you in, and you're going to do your best to give us your 30-second elevator pitch. Are you ready? On your mark.
I'm ready.
Get set. Go.
I'm Sarah. I'm a mom. I'm a partner to Tamara. I'm a business owner. I'm a BRCA2 positive carrier. And I'm subject of a documentary called Not Quite That, which has really made us really see how important representation is for queer folks and non-cis folks. Over to you.
I am Sarah's partner of 40 years in a few months. Unbelievable.
Yes.
Also a mother of our 3 children. In my professional life, I'm a therapist, and I'm just happy to be here and talk about queer families and how important representation is.
Boom. It was beautiful. You went slightly over,
We
but I
did.
won't fault you for it because
Thank
you have a lot to say. And you've been married 40 years. Congratulations. That is a huge feat.
Right?
I
It is.
think I'm at, we've been together, 17 years now,
Oh, wow.
married since 2013. I don't even know the math. I
Right.
can't do the math. But anyway, I lose track because I have 2 small kids and I can't keep track of anything. We are very much aligned because this is what I talk about all the time on this show, is representation is absolutely everything, especially as pertains to the most marginalized amongst us,
Mhm.
right? And the LGBTQIA community, as I like to call it, is facing a lot of stuff right now, especially in these states that we're living in. I feel like tomorrow we might need you to come on as a therapist to help us through
Yeah.
some of the stuff that's going on. Can we take it back slightly to just the beginning of your relationship, and when did you meet and how did that all go down?
You know, it was pretty classic 20-year-olds drama, intrigue, relationships, breakups. So, pretty classic but it was in the early 80s. And we met. We actually were at the same university, didn't know each other, and were, feminists and hanging out in the women's center and kind of like eyed each other across the room, but never,
as you do,
never spoke. And then one day we were in the room alone studying. And after like an hour, Tamara got up and said, "Did you say something?" And me, in my earnest honesty, said, "No." So she walked away. And then
you tried,
Sarah.
Tamara.
I tried. I really did.
Yeah. So then we had a friend in common and we met. And then Tamara was leaving to go off to do her master's in women's studies in the United Kingdom. And I was going to visit a cousin. And then, kind of long story short, I kind of showed up on her doorstep when I was over there with no phones, no maps. She didn't even have a phone where she was living, and was pretty nervous about what would happen. But then, the door opened and there was this very smiling face, and kind of the rest was history. I mean, it took a year to kind of sort out all of the things. And then, so the 40 years is kind of after that first year of when we finally said, okay, this is a go.
I feel like it's still pretty much a U-Haul situation, though. It feels pretty like
much.
Yeah. Once we said it was like
it was U-Haul.
Yeah,
we found our person. Here it is. We're done. Okay, let's go. Yeah, exactly. Okay, and so when did talk? Because this is a big thing, especially for queer folks. When did talk of family building come into the picture?
Pretty early on, actually. In our community in Vancouver, there was 2 women who had a daughter, but really that was the only person we knew. And I was really wanting to have children, really, my whole life. And Sarah was much more ambivalent. So that took quite a few years to talk that through until we got on the same page. And then we'd been together about 7 years before we first tried to get pregnant.
We got a dog first.
Yes.
As
we
you
had
do.
a puppy,
So did I.
And then we thought, okay, we can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you think, this isn't so hard. The dog. And then, nope. A rude awakening there.
Yeah.
I haven't asked either of you, how do you identify? Do you identify as lesbians? Do you identify
Personally, I've always identified as a lesbian. I also am really happy with being called in, for myself, being queer. But I think lesbian is what I identify with.
I don't know. How about queer being? I just made that up.
I like that.
I do. I mean, lesbian, I think it's just being on this sort of, I've just really been discovering so much about my identity and this non-cis and non-binary. So, I think I'm just like queer lesbian, I guess I would say.
Queerbian. I very much appreciate that. I like that a lot because I love the term queer, and it's really making a comeback. For a long time, queer was not a good thing to be called, but I like the term queer. And even back when I was coming out in the early aughts, shall you say, there were 3 choices, and you made a choice, right?
For sure.
We didn't have all these beautiful, amazing identities and ways to express ourselves that the youth today do. So, navigating that, and then now coming into these places where we're, interesting. Wait a second. I can be a lesbian, and also I can play with kind of the idea of my masculine side, even though I'm just like super feminine, like crazy feminine. But I've always been afraid to look like a dyke, like to look too dykish. And I'm leaning more into that as I grow older, because the young people today are helping me see that it's okay to go one way one day and then go another way the other day. It's okay.
Right.
It's okay. Right? There's freedom. There's so much freedom in that. We got to get a couple things out of the way, and then I want to get into BRCA and everything you went through with that, because that is huge, and the whole basis of this documentary. When you decided, okay, we got the puppy, we can actually do this, there wasn't much of, I'm imagining, there wasn't much of a map for how to do it. Even when I was starting, 14 years ago, there wasn't much of a map, right? I just did what my queer friends that I hung out with did. What was the conversation surrounding how we want to do this?
We, at that time in Canada, Vancouver anyway, lesbians weren't allowed to go to fertility clinics. So we had no access to, sperm banks. So our options were to find a known donor or to smuggle, probably from your sperm bank that you always talk about in California, was to go and get sperm and then smuggle it across the border on dry ice. So those were our options.
And did you know people who had actually done that?
Yeah, because that's how we heard about it,
Oh, that's a first for me. And I've spoken to a lot of people. Okay.
So those were apparently our options. And so we actually, our first choice was a known donor. So we said, let's give ourselves a year to find a donor, person that we, know. And then it was kind of funny because, when you I don't know if you're going to buy a new car or something and all you see is that car. So it's like all we did whenever we would see men or be like, look at his teeth. Like, how? So then we were just really lucky at the time. Oh no, we'd moved. We used to live in a lesbian housing co-op and we know folks.
Yeah, you did. Yes,
we
you
did. It's still around.
It's Canada.
It's still around.
I need to move to one of those. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, we knew these old friends from there, and they had a friend that we'd seen around, and they were a Jewish couple because we're Jewish, and they had their own kids, and we thought, we'll just ask them, and they were like, yes, it was just so easy and amazing. So it just happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they already had kids.
Mm-hmm.
And what did you do in regards to just a contract, or was it all just verbal? Here's what it's going to be.
We did do a legal contract.
You did.
And our donor was just very open to anything.
We probably wouldn't have. Your brother was her brother's a lawyer. He was like, you need a contract. But it was probably wise. Sorry, carry on.
I think it is. I think it's wise.
Yeah. And, they really, I think they saw this as a gift. They had pretty strong political leanings. And I think that they saw that we didn't have access to this and that we wanted to be parents. And I think they just saw this as a gift. And when I say they, the two of them, because obviously both of them had to be supportive of this idea. And so that's what we did. So we had a legal contract and then we did the insemination at home. Mm-hmm. And I know this sounds a little bit magical, but the first time we tried, I got pregnant.
Can I tell you something? You are the third person I have talked to in a row that it happened on the first try. But that's so rare. It's so rare. It took me 3 years, but we weren't trying at home. It was fertility drama and it was not fun. But you are the third person in a row that I've interviewed that it happened on the first try and it was at home. Interesting. Because guess what? We know our bodies.
Right.
And you know what? Maybe the medical field doesn't know bodies with uteruses, uteri
for sure.
that well.
Yeah.
Yes.
And again, that was our option. Nobody was going to inseminate for us. So, little artichoke jars,
Artichoke jars and syringe.
Sterile. Yep.
And a sterile syringe and first try.
And it worked. And you tracked your fertility.
Yep. And I, had the ovulation kit and all of that stuff. And I think we were just as surprised as we ever could have been. It was shocking.
Tamara, you carried.
I carried both. Yeah.
You carried both. And you had the desire always to carry a child.
I did. I did.
And Sarah, what were your feelings around carrying a child?
I think generally I was just really hesitant about the whole concept because of my own story, just not wanting to, more being afraid to be a parent. So I think at one point after I did really think about it seriously, but by then it was a little bit too late. So I never had that sort of like Tamara had, I've always wanted to birth children and have that experience. I never really had that in a big way.
Understandable. And so many couples I talk to, it's very similar. My personal story, we just always assumed that I would be the one to carry because I've always wanted to. And then right after our wedding, my wife, as we were sitting down in a bar drinking beers, as respectful lesbians do, she turned to me and she said, you know what? I think I want to carry. And she threw the whole plan off its axis, and we had to rethink everything. And that meant we had to start earlier because she was older than me and blah, 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 blah. So we each carried one.
Oh, nice.
But a lot of times, there's one person, and this is one of the easier decisions we make. If it's one person in the couple who's like, I think I'm okay with that.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But then we get to that non-bio connection and fears surrounding not having that biological connection. Like for me personally, maybe because I was so hell-bent on being the one to carry the child or children, I got really, 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 really scared that I wasn't going to connect to the baby that my wife gave birth to. So I'm wondering, Sarah, if you had any emotions surrounding that. And you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. But.
I don't think I ever had those. Maybe I've just forgotten, so remind me if I did. I mean, I think I've had moments where I'm acutely aware of that they're not my biological children, but I rarely think about it. Like I feel it doesn't occur to me that I'm not their parents. So, and I suppose it's a bit more complicated, not complicated, but just because we're very close to Tamara's family and not to mine. I was very kind of strategic about how my kids were exposed to my family or not. So I think if we'd had more connection, that it might have made it sort of it might have made a difference to how I felt about it. But generally, I don't really think about it's not been like a constant thing of like, oh, I'm not really their parent or anything like that. I feel very
right. And even not when Tamara was pregnant. There was, I know it's hard to think back because they're grown.
That was a long time ago.
Right. Exactly. It's hard to think back.
Yeah.
But I saw the documentary. Your boys are so, like, you just seem like such a loving, amazing family, which is a testament to queer families. Yeah. I always say we're the best, but
yeah.
But they're so loving. You're a very loving and amazing family, and I always say once the babies are here, that all those fears, if you have them, really do dissipate. Even though every once in a while it'll come up. Every once in a while it'll come up to me like, she didn't get that from me. You know what I mean? But it's mostly like, she's so beautiful. And then I can be like, I can say she's beautiful because I have no biological connection. I'm allowed to brag. So that's how it comes up for me. I love to go into that. And so, okay, second child, was it with the same donor?
It is. Yes, it was.
Amazing. And do you still have a relationship? Is there a relationship?
Oh yeah, we're very close to them. We really were an early modern family.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And what do they call the family? Because it's a husband and a wife and kids.
They just call them by their first names, but the two kids, who are obviously older and adults, they call their half brother and half sister. And they all have a very close relationship. So that just evolved over time in a really organic and beautiful way.
I love it.
Yeah, it wasn't a plan. It just evolved as things do.
These relationships that can be formed by these known donor situations can be so profound and beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also a testament to just the queer experience and chosen family and how much we rock.
I think they were very special because they never saw themselves as parents. It was really what we wanted. So they've always been there for whatever we needed. And then, when the kids were little, we started celebrating birthdays and holidays together and continued to. But it was we never asked them about, what they thought about parenting issues or, what we should do or anything. And I really appreciated how respectful they've always been and supportive.
Actually, it just reminded me that was something that was super important to me, that we were the parents. And that's probably the only place I felt a bit threatened was like, well, if they start becoming, really tight or something, the kids will see him as the father and not me as. So I think that was where I had a bit of tension. And so we were really clear. But then after a while, we're like, well, we'll let our Max decide, when he wants to meet them. And he never said anything. So after a while, we're like, well, we like them. And, they have a small family. We have a big family. Let's just hang out. So it kind of evolved into that.
Yeah.
And then we also have these are the biological kids. We also have our chosen daughter, who is someone we met in the lesbian co-op, of course.
Of course.
And she lived downstairs from us, and she had a single mom, and we took a real shining to each other and just became a really big part of her life, and, helped her go to programs and all the kinds of things. And just stayed connected her whole life. And now she's married and has a daughter, and we're grandmas. So that's our first grandma. Yeah.
Now you're gay grandmas.
Gay grandmas, yeah.
What's it like being gay grandmas? I just love it. I love that we're turning into grandmas now. And we can be out as gay grandmas, right? We don't have to hide it. We're not just roommates.
No.
Gay grandmas.
We're great grandmas. Yeah.
Isn't it amazing?
Oh, it's so special because to have a granddaughter who you just get to watch grow and be part of her life, we get to do it all over again in a different way. Mm-hmm. And it's really wonderful. And this parenting role we've taken on with who we call our goddaughter has just gotten stronger and stronger over the years. And so in so many ways, it's just all kind of worked out, but it was never planned that way, which is interesting how things just worked out.
Yeah.
So we're very involved in her life and do all the grandma fun things, and it's great.
It's just so heartwarming. It really is. And you see it. It shines through in the documentary. It really shines through. We'll be right back.
Queer Family Podcast.
Hey, y'all. Hey, just a quick interruption to talk about the sponsor of this here episode and the entire year, California Cryobank. Now, it's beautiful if you can use a known donor, if you want to use a known donor. Some of us can't use a known donor, and some of us don't actually want to use a known donor. So if you're one of those folks, you might be in the market for donor sperm. And I have a wonderful, wonderful code for you with California Cryobank, the #1 sperm bank in the U.S. that ships to over 40 countries and offers so many wonderful perks for LGBTQIA families, like second parent adoption letters if you need it, vial transfer between partners if you have to switch midway. They really are doing the work and showing up for our community. And so if you are looking to start your family and you think donor sperm is your option, use code LOVEISLOVE at cryobank.com and start making those babies. Go shopping, go see what they have. You're going to get a free level 2 subscription to their donor catalog. And you can also use that on a discount towards their level 3 subscription, which gives you even more information about the donors. Go shopping, go make those babies, and then come tell me about them. And thank you, California Cryobank, for your wonderful, wonderful sponsorship. I love ya. I love Cali Cryo. That's how I made my babies. Don't forget that. Okay, back to the conversation.
Love is love.
And now I'm thinking about the discussion around the table with all your... I think they were all lesbian friends. I'm just assuming table full of lesbians.
Yep.
When Sarah, you found out that you had the BRCA gene and the emotions that you went through, and then what ensued in the documentary and the conversations that happened surrounding breasts and body image are really, really, I think, so important, especially for the queer community, because many, many of us do have hang-ups on our bodies and the way we show up in the world in different ways, on different levels, right? Like I said earlier, I was always afraid to look too butch, even though I'm like super feminine. Like I don't want to wear baggy pants because I have short hair, like weird things that we think showing up in the world and the way people perceive us. So can we go a little bit into your journey with BRCA and the realizations you made about yourself and all your friends?
Yeah, well, it was definitely, not to be cliche, but it was quite a journey because the filming took place over quite a long period because COVID landed right in the middle of it. So I, luckily found out that I was a carrier. It was a lot of work to be able to get tested.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, just because of the way it's changing now, but just the way it is here, if you don't have somebody in your immediate family who has cancer, then you're not considered at risk. So my mother died of cancer, but she was over, once you're over 65 or something, they don't count cancer as a risk because a lot of people get cancer as they age. So
even if it's breast cancer or prostate cancer
or ovarian. Yeah.
Ovarian.
And my mom died of ovarian cancer. Anyway.
Oh my God. I have two. I have breast and prostate. So, I mean, not me personally. Well, I don't know.
In your family.
But I want to get,
I want to get
tested.
I want to get tested.
Your documentary made me realize that in my next appointment, I have to push for this. And I know it's going to be a battle because we're in the States and the healthcare system is a joke.
Yeah, I know. You can pay for it. There's also organizations now here just in our province that are offering free testing. So anyway, yes, I got tested, and then it just made me think so much about already being kind of gender nonconforming. It's like, but always having my breasts to get me into the washrooms or, so it was like, okay, well, what's going to happen if I don't have them,
Right.
And, when I look back now, sort of where I am in my life now, I would have asked very different questions and I would have advocated for different things. So when I went to see the breast surgeon, it was like, well, you should go see a plastic surgeon to talk about reconstruction. I was like, huh? Me? Are you me? And so, but there weren't other options. There wasn't gender affirming healthcare options. So I kind of went along with it and sort of went to a plastic surgeon and was traumatized essentially. She was wonderful. It's just more the idea of like boobs and stuff.
It.
Yeah. So
A cup or a B cup or a C cup.
But yeah, so then it just made me think, well, I don't know, like what does everybody think of? I never really thought about it. So I thought, let's have a dinner party. Let's invite our friends over and say, what do you think about your breasts? And what's your relationship? And it was actually, for most of us, we're really surprised, even though we know each other pretty well.
Right.
What people said was like, really? Wow.
Yeah. It's fascinating. You said at one point that you thought kind of your breasts, and you alluded to it a little bit, were basically your ticket into the bathroom, your ticket into the female washroom, right? At least I have these so people can't say you don't belong here, because in all other intents and purposes, you might pass as in the middle somewhere and people can give you shit for it. Excuse my French. And a lot of folks at the table said similar things to that. And then folks at the table said totally different things that were surprising, which I found really eye-opening. And it got me thinking about my connection to my breasts. Would you like to share anything else about like that discussion at the table? Because I really did find that discussion so fascinating. Because you just assume the feminine women are going to want to keep the boobs. And the more dykey, I am doing quote unquotes, the more dykey women are going to be fine not having the boobs. Hell yeah, why not? Right? And it wasn't that way at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah. I think what was really fascinating to me is how, as women, and as Sarah was saying, even though we were good friends, it's just something we've never talked about.
Right.
And we're not talking about the film right now, but as the film has traveled around to many festivals, that's probably the scene that impacts people the most. Saying, oh my, I've never thought about that. I've never had that conversation. I really need to think about it, similar to what you've just said, because we don't really think about our relationship to our breasts. And it's really quite amazing when we talk about it, how everybody does have a very different experience.
Right. And we talk about body dysphoria a lot on the show. And I don't think of body dysphoria in terms of my body. However, if I was given the choice to, like, say I tested positive for BRCA and I'm gonna get the breast removal, would I want the reconstructive surgery? No. I don't. I don't at all. I want a flat chest.
Had you thought of that before?
No, never thought about it. And I haven't talked to my wife about it yet because she was putting the kids to bed while I was trying to watch it and wash dishes. But I have a strong feeling. My wife, who is the less feminine of the two of us, she's still feminine. I have a feeling she would want breasts. So it's really, really interesting. And I think this is a conversation we should have with the females in our lives, or those who identify as female, I should say, in our lives. Even those who identify as male who actually have boobs as well.
Well, and some of what I learned during this process around having reconstruction, I totally understand females who do that and want to do that in the world. I get it. But there's a lot of challenges. For example, I didn't know any of this. You can't actually have a smaller breast than you already have just because of the surgery site. So you end up actually having to have breasts that are a little bit bigger. Well, oh, that's something. And you also, the breasts, that the implants only last about 10 years. So you will be having another surgery.
No, thank you.
So there was a lot of, and sometimes there's infection and leakage. So I learned a lot about how challenging a reconstruction is as well.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Clear, there's no feeling.
And there's no feeling. So that's the other thing. Yeah. So you've lost, I mean, that's a real grief for folks who have to have a double mastectomy as a result of cancer or as a way to avoid getting cancer because of that they have the BRCA gene. And so when you have a reconstruction, you don't have feeling anymore. So there, so it's a lot.
That would be the hardest part for me. And
of course.
think, lesbian sex, I don't know, not to get too graphic, but that's a big part of it.
Sure.
So.
Sure. That'll be the next conversation. That's the one thing that didn't get talked about at that dinner party. But
yeah,
I mean, I just think in general, like, we never would have had that conversation. I wouldn't have invited people over to my house and said, like, hi, let's talk about, like, there was a context for it. But it just shows how important those conversations are, and that that's what a lot of people say. They're like, I want to be having conversations like this, and not just about breasts, but about our bodies, about all of it, and
all of it.
How do we do that with each other?
I know. And I feel like things are changing in the wrong direction. Like, we're going away from the 70s where we had the parties where we looked at our vaginas and stuff. Yes. I mean, I was never a part of one of those parties, but I'm pretty sure my mom was, so like
our bodies ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I missed that party too. I wish I would have been invited.
I think we just did it at home.
Right, exactly. Well, we have each other to help each other with that. Yeah. But also, Sarah, there was a moment in there where you were kind of on the fence about it in a way, about how you were going to feel. And you really grappled with, do I want reconstructive surgery? Do I want, and then there's that scene where you're looking in the mirror and you're checking it out. And at one point you said, like, you felt good with the breasts gone. There was a moment of, it's better if you say it because I am going to say it wrong. But that was profound to me.
It was to me too. I was caught up in that societal pressure. Like, I don't know if I ever really was thinking about, like, where I never would have done it, but I felt like I was told that I had to consider it, kind of, because a lot of women regret it if they don't do it. And so you at least have to consider it. So it just, when I look back at the film now, I'm like, seriously? Like, so I don't, it comes across that way. I don't know if I ever really considered it, but I felt a pressure to do that. Yeah. And the minute I woke up, kind of, or soon after that, one film Q&A, this young gay man said, like, something about body dysphoria. And I was like, huh? Oh, right. Interesting. Thank you for pointing that out. Because I think that's probably, I didn't even know. Because I felt so much more comfortable with a flat chest. It just feels so much more me. And it was like this instant feeling of, I think I also said to people that it felt like, the feeling when you go skinny dipping? Mm-hmm. And there's just that, I don't know what it is, just this beautiful freedom and kind of like sensation. I don't know. So I don't know why, but that's how it felt.
It kind of reminded me a little bit of when I finally, in my head, I didn't come out to people yet, but when I finally admitted it in my head, when I remember there was a moment I was walking down Boylston Street in Boston. I was in college, walking down, and my head went, "You're a lesbian. You are a lesbian." And I said it to myself. Right. There was this like this euphoric, like lifting, like a weight had lifted, and but it was such a scary thought, and I immediately put it way back down there. However, there was this like, oh yeah, that's right. That's like a uplifting kind of feeling. So that's what your story made me think of.
Right.
My kind of moment of reckoning with my own sexuality, which was such a scary thing, and yet such a euphoric thing at the same time. The dichotomy of the two.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that scene really touched me, and the scene where you're talking to your sons who seem like such amazing young men. And when they were talking to, I'm going to cry because I have a daughter and I have a son, and I have been really, really afraid. I had a lot of fear. You might be seeing a theme here. There's a lot of fear in this person in front of you. But I had a lot of fear when I found out I was having a boy. And I had a lot of fear about raising a male in this world. And the listeners have heard all about it, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. However, hearing your sons talk about how in your house, emotions were talked about, and it was such a free house to express yourself. And your boys seem like they are still holding on to that. That is what I'm hoping for my son. And I don't know if we're going to get there or not. And hearing them say that their friends used to say that they're jealous, your family's the best. I wish I had your mom's. That scene hit hard because as a queer parent, there's a lot of fear that surrounds raising your kids in a world that might not necessarily accept their families in a good way.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to expand on that kind of particular scene or even just like raising your boys in general, but I'd be open to hearing anything you have to say about that since you've already gone through it.
Right.
Yeah, the other side.
Well, I mean, let's face it, raising children is one of life's greatest challenges.
Yeah.
Even with all of the parenting books, and we do our best. I do think that we both really, from the get-go, just believed in just filling our house with love. And I think Sarah had said earlier that we're very close to my family, and they've always been a big part of the kids' lives. And I think that also has just really affected the kids. They've always just felt a sense of belonging. And I think that is really huge. I also think that, as Sarah said this early on when we were raising them, something about she always wanted ours to be the house where the kids came to. And, kids
Weren't.
like cool parents.
Yeah.
And I think we seemed kind of cool. And we would get to know the kids and talk with them and be interested in them. I mean, you just do your best. But I think all of it really helped that we had relationships with our kids' friends a little bit and tried to be friendly with their parents. And I mean, I think how they always say that, women have to work 3 times as hard to be seen. I think as queer parents, we have to work really hard. I just think that's how it is, which is challenging.
Yeah.
But I think we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You did a good job.
We had kids really young. So also, and in the 90s. So we were a little bit of the role models. So we worked really hard at it.
And we were the only, queer family at their school.
At their school and,
At least we have a couple of queer families in our school. Things are different.
Yeah,
Totally.
But I still find myself challenging the norms a lot in conversation and feeling like that, here she goes again. Like, okay, the lesbian perspective,
Right. Good for you.
And so, but then I feel like a squeaky wheel. And then sometimes I feel like I'm annoying people. And also I have a whole platform all about normalization. So sometimes I come off as a bit much, and then they're like, oh, there she is with her pink hair. Okay, here comes Jaimie,
One thing I will say to you, Jaimie, and I don't know how old your kids are, if you've experienced this, but I think that for me, until the kids got a lot older, they didn't really realize what they had. And there was this moment, our kids did actually go to university. I know lots of kids don't, but I remember at different times when they were meeting a bunch of people and young folks who came from just all kinds of different life experiences, them saying, "Oh my God, I had no idea what kind of family we came from." There's somebody behind you waving to you.
I know. It's Lori, the dog walker, the most fashionable dog walker you will ever meet.
Wow.
And she always feels so bad. I'm sorry, Lori. Come on in because the dog is on the bed. No, she's like a recurring character now in the.
That is really sweet. Anyway, just to say that until they got older and talked to lot of people, and they're like, wow, I didn't really realize what our family was. I didn't realize you were really good parents. So I'm just saying, when we all have troubles with our kids and they say, I hate you and why won't you let me do this? It pays off later.
That is so good to hear because my son turns 7 tomorrow and my daughter is 10, almost 11. So we're in middle school.
Yeah.
And second grade. So we're in it. We are in the thick of it. And that is actually, Tamara, thank you for saying that because we are in the place where they're like, oh my God, why won't, and then there's technology. This is our big issue that we're dealing with.
Of course.
And we seem to be really strict about technology because we're protecting our kids. How dare we? So
yeah,
that's good to hear. But I do think y'all did a really good job because your sons seem pretty awesome. I didn't meet them in person, obviously, but
Yeah.
I think you're doing a great job. And I really, really enjoyed the documentary and I appreciate you for sending it my way. I appreciate you for reaching out and for telling your beautiful story and for being trailblazers. Thank you.
Thank you for all of that.
Thank you for paving the road for us. There's a lot more work that needs to be done, but it's a lot easier now because folks like you went through a lot of it before we did. And then some, and then some, and then some. Is there anything else you would like to add before we tell everybody where to find the documentary? And of course, everything will be linked in our show notes and all the things. But if there's anything else you'd love to add, I'm happy to hear.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
And it's been
lovely.
really nice to talk to you.
Oh, good.
And thank you.
I think I'd say one thing because I think one of the hardest parts for me, and I think others, is the time at which your kids stop thinking you're the most amazing thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a fairly long chunk of time and that your job as a parent is to let them do that and let them individuate and let them become themselves and not need them to kind of meet your needs or be your friend or all that kind of stuff. And I think it's really challenging because you go from being a rock star to being kind of a non-rock star for kind of it can be for quite a long time. And I think, but it is important that they come round again. And I just feel grateful for that. So.
I really appreciate you saying that a lot. This has been a pleasure. Please tell everyone at home where they can find your documentary and what they can do to help push it forward to an even wider audience because representation matters.
The documentary is called Not Quite That. And if people go to the website, that's really the best place because it's different ways of viewing it in the US and Canada. So if you go to the website, which is notquitethat.ca, you will find the story and the trailer and how it all came to be. And then there'll be links to the film. In terms of distribution, we're kind of finished the film festival circuit. It's mostly, time stamped, but we're continuing to do community screenings. So if folks are interested and there's a way, we can go, or I can, we can go. Like we love, the most important kind of meaningful part is when we get groups together and we have these conversations and the Q&A discussions have been just just amazing. So people are interested. They want to host a screening in their community, get in touch with us. And if you watch it, like watch it with your friends or your family. It's a film to, one of the things that we hear a lot is people said, I've been thinking about it for days or weeks or whatever. So see it with friends and talk about it, have the conversations in your own groups and families.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I want to add, it's not extremely long. It's a pretty
47 minutes.
Yeah.
So with the credits.
It's a lot of times less time that you would take listening to one of my podcasts. I try to keep them shorter, but they sometimes go too long. So listeners out there, if you know anyone who has any ways of putting a community together who can set up screenings, you should reach out. Probably there's an email on the website, but which will be linked. But reach out, because this is the stuff we have to do, especially right now in these political times. Let's uplift this content and let's get it out there. So if there's anybody out there who can help get this out there, reach out. Let's do this. Let's do this together.
It.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you. We're a community. And now you're a part of the family. So keep me posted. I want to know. I want to know how the grandparenting goes and all the things.
Yeah,
we will.
Sure.
We'll stay in touch, Jaimie. Thank you.
Please do. Okay, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yes, too. Thanks for having us.
Queer Family Podcast.
A huge, huge thank you once again to California Cryobank for sponsoring this here little show for an entire year of episodes. Go to cryobank.com, use code LOVEISLOVE, and get a free level 2 subscription to their donor catalog. Go do it. Let's make those babies and uplift these queer families, y'all. Thank you.
Love is love.
Whew. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy it, feel free to listen to another or watch another. I have so many episodes for your listening or viewing pleasure. Just go pick one and enjoy. There's a lot. There really is. And also, if you really do like this show, please, I know I say it all the time, but please do consider supporting the show on Patreon. You're just going to go to patreon.com/The Queer Family Podcast. You're going to pick a tier, you're going to join, and you're going to get that bonus content. And you're also going to get my love and adoration for the rest of my life. I love you all. Thanks for tuning in. Keep on tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Mwah.